Alrighty, here we are, and we are going to be subtracting decimals using models. Subtracting decimals using models. So, on our first problem in our notes, we will use models to subtract. Each fully shaded flat, that's one of these big boxes here, is one whole. So here we have one whole, we have a second whole, okay? Currently, what decimal value is shaded? Well, for us to know that, we might want to know what each of these tiny little squares are worth of the big flat square. Well, each of these is worth 100th, like one of those snake numbers. So here, I see I have 2 of the long rectangles filled in. Well, because I know models, I know that that's the same as 2/10, but if we wrote it in hundredths, it would be 20 hundredths. Both numbers are the same, 2/10 and 20 hundredths. Okay? Right now we have 2 and 2/10. Okay? We're going to subtract 1 and 15 hundredths. If I want to subtract, how could I show that on a model like this? Well, I could start off by crossing off 1 and 15 hundredths by beginning with the place value furthest to the right. So here I see I have 5 hundredths. I could go ahead and cross off 5 hundredths. Then I'm going to move to the next highest place, or the next lowest place value, which is a tenth. And I'm going to cross off a tenth. Okay? And then I'm going to move over to the ones place, which is the next lowest place value, and cross off 1 whole. So now that we've crossed off or taken away 1 and 15 hundredths, let's see what we have left. I have 1 whole still left, or 1 1 still left, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths left. 1 and 5 hundredths is the difference between 2 and 2/10 and 1 and 15 hundredths. All we did was we crossed off what we were taking away. Here's a problem that I'd like for you to work on your whiteboard. What problem is being represented by this model? Pause the video and write down the problem. Okay, the problem here is 1 and 54 hundredths minus 74 hundredths. Go ahead now and find the difference. Solve this subtraction problem. Pause the video. Okay, the difference is we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths left. We'd have 8 tenths left, or 0.8. Correctly set as 8 tenths. Okay? I know this because we start with, and I know that this was our math problem because we started with 1 and 54 hundredths, and by crossing off the 74 hundredths, I saw that that was a subtraction problem. Find the difference. 2 and 4 hundredths minus 96 hundredths. Okay? Discuss each answer choice and the mistakes or correct thinking that people would use to pick that answer. So, which of these is a correct answer, and how do you think that they could come up with that answer? Pause the video. All right, the correct answer here, let's see, if I took this away from this flat, I'd have 4 of them left, right? And I'd have 4 left, and then combined with these 4 that would be left, that's 8. So I'd have 8 hundredths, and then this 1 whole here. So the correct answer would be A. A would be the correct answer. The mistake that they'd make if they were choosing D is that they accidentally added these 2 numbers instead of subtracting. Okay. Model for decimal subtraction. Solve 4. Notice that's 4 wholes. If there's no decimal point, that means there's an invisible one right behind the 4. 4 minus 3/10. Explain how you found your solution. Okay, let's go ahead and draw a tape diagram. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4 wholes. How can we subtract 3/10 from 4 wholes? Well, I need to take one of those wholes and I need to break it up into tenths. Take that one whole and split it up into tenths. Now that we've made it be 3 and 10/10, which we've used before with fractions, 3 and 10/10, we can now subtract 3/10 by crossing them off. And we're left with 1, 2, 3 wholes, or 3 ones, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 10, 7/10. 3 and 7/10 is our final answer. It is the difference between 4 and 3/10. Okay, model for decimal subtraction. Do the same thing that we just did. Solve 5 minus 2/10. Explain how you found your solution. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, here we go. Our answer would be 4 and 8/10. You could say, since I'm subtracting 2/10 from 5 wholes, it would help to divide one of the wholes into tenths. The other 4 wholes don't need to be divided up. I can see there are 4 wholes and 8/10 left over, or 4 and 8/10. Okay, another way, similar to what we did when we were adding decimals, is to draw discs, and we would do the same thing where we cross off the discs. So let's draw a disc and use the chart to show 831 thousandths minus 62 hundredths. Again, this is the number we're starting with, so that's what we're going to draw, and then this is the number that we're going to cross off or take away. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the tenths place. We have 1, 2, 3 discs in the hundredths place, and we have 1 disc in the thousandths place. Okay, how many thousandths will I subtract? Well, we don't have a number here in the thousandths place. If we did, it would be an invisible 0, which I do recommend doing, just because that way you make sure that you have a number in all of the same place values. Okay, so we're not going to take anything away for the thousandths place, but we are going to take a number away for the hundredths place. I'm going to take away 2 hundredths. So let's go ahead and cross off 2 of the hundredths. Okay, how many tenths will I take away, or will I subtract? I'm going to subtract 6/10. So we cross off those 6/10. Well, what is the difference? Now I'm left with 1,000th, I'm left with 100th, and I'm left with 2/10. So my answer is 211 thousandths. 211 thousandths. Okay, here's a different problem. What's different about this problem? Well, I see that I'm going to be subtracting 2, but I only have 1 to start out with. So in this problem, we're going to have to do some regrouping. Regrouping. How many thousandths are we subtracting? We're subtracting 2. We only have 1, so I'm going to need to regroup. I'm going to take one of these hundredths, which from our place value knowledge, we know that 1/100th is worth 10 thousandths. We can't write that if we were using the digits, but because I'm using a place value chart, I can draw these discs to show that regrouping. Okay, now that I have 11 in the thousandths place, I can subtract. I'm going to subtract 2 thousandths and cross those off. How many thousandths do I have left now? Well, 11 minus 2, that gave me 9. Okay, now remember, this here changed to 2 hundredths. So I cannot this time subtract 2 hundredths with 9 hundredths. So again, I'm going to have to regroup. I can't do that and get a whole number, so I have to regroup. That means I'm going to go to the next highest place value, I'm going to take 1 away, which will give me 10 hundredths. I'm going to take 1/10 away, which is equal to 10 hundredths. Okay, how many hundredths are we subtracting? Again, we're subtracting 9 hundredths from the current 12, which will give us 3 hundredths left. Okay, lastly, now we only have 7 tenths, and we're going to subtract the 2 tenths because we had regrouped, and 7 minus 2, cross those off, gives me 5 tenths. So 831 thousandths minus 292 thousandths gives me 539 thousandths. 539 thousandths. Go ahead and copy this into your notes. Okay. On your whiteboard or in your graphic organizers, go ahead and try to solve this problem. Draw 4 83/100 discs and then cross off 1 29/100. Pause the video. Here we go, our 4 83/100. Notice nothing's here because we have a 0 in that place value, but that 0 is important because it tells me that I am going to skip that place value, nothing's there. Okay, then I'm going to subtract nothing from the thousands place. I'm going to subtract 9 from the 8. Oh, I can't do 8 minus 9, so I'm going to have to regroup. Well, I didn't have anything in the tens place to borrow from or regroup from, so I have to go all the way over to the ones place. If I take a 1 away, that gives me 1 equals 10 tenths. But then I'm going to have to move something over to the hundredths, so I have to take 1/10 away and move it to the hundredths place. So now I have 18 hundredths minus 9 hundredths, which gives me 9 hundredths left. Okay, now we have 2 tenths, and we're taking those 2 tenths away from the 9 tenths because we already borrowed, getting 7 tenths. And 3 ones minus 1 1 gives me 2 ones. So our final answer here is 2 793 thousandths. Okay, how are models useful? I can visually see the numbers, I can cross them off, and I have a better concrete understanding of subtracting decimals. When borrowing or regrouping, what do you do with your model? Well, you're going to have to cross one off from the next highest place value, and you're going to give the place value you're working with 10, because remember 1/10 equals 10 hundredths, 1 whole equals 10 tenths, and so on. Okay, let's find the difference here. If you want, you can use your graphic organizer all over again. 2 3/10 minus 1 7/10. Go ahead and pause the video, and you should get an answer of 6/10. You had to do some regrouping on that one. All right, thanks for watching, guys.